All right, excellent. I am super excited, guys. Welcome back to another great episode here. So, if this is your first time listening in, we really want to welcome you to this platform. For those of you who are returning, we also would like to welcome you guys to the show as well. Welcome back. So today episode is very important. We have a very important story that we would like to highlight today, and I know everybody here, maybe some of you guys have maybe know somebody who have been affected by the U.S. prison system, or maybe you might be the person who actually is being affected right now. And so we are going to be covering that topic today about prison reforms and just a story about being wrongfully convicted and all of that. So, like I said, our guest will be sharing his incredible journey. Of course, now he went from being wrongfully convicted to becoming an attorney, and also now he's also using his platform and his talents and his profession to fight for justice for the innocents. And he also is really working towards helping a lot of families be able to welcome a lot of innocents back to their home with the family. So he's doing a great job. And I want you guys to help me, please. Welcome, Mr. Jeff Deskovic.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. And by the way, you did pronounce my name correct.
Awesome. I was just smiling. I have this big smile right now because I feel so excited that I actually got that right. I practiced so many times. So I'm glad we got that out of the way. Yeah, so thank you for being here, part of the show. We're glad to have you.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here as well.
Wonderful. And so, you know, I read a little bit about your story, and I remember being so intrigued by it, of course. I mean, who won't be? It's a very incredible story as that. And and I figure this is something that is not just your story. I think there's so many other people that have maybe experienced some of the things that you experienced as someone who was wrongfully convicted and sentenced to 16 years in prison. And so I'm so glad we get to cover this today. So I would like for you to take us back to how you went from being a high schooler, right? And then I believe it was 16 years old
Yes.
to, yes, take us back to that time. And then now from being 16-year-old high school to now being convicted, wrongfully convicted of a crime that you never committed.
Sure. So the year was 1990. It was in Westchester County, New York. So it was the suburbs. It was ethnically diverse. It was middle class. Peekskill was a city, approximately 25,000 people. Murders were pretty rare. So when this crime happened, it created atmosphere, fear, rumor, paranoia. Parents were
Mhm.
concerned their own safety, the safety of their children. And so growing up, I kind of lived a double life. I mean, in one hand, I was kind of the life of the party after school, like whatever I would suggest would kind of be what we did. If we were going to play kickball or basketball, we're going to ride bikes, play Monopoly, do video games, and a few other games we even invented.
Mhm.
Um, but in high school, I was a little bit younger than the kids in my grade. I had skipped a grade like when I was much younger, and I finally caught up to me in high school. So, I mean, the
Mhm.
kids there, they were interested in drinking beer and parties and chasing girls, and I was not really into that. I was into what I just mentioned to you, and I definitely was not into playing organized sports. So, in the course, the police investigation, they interviewed a lot of students from the high school, and some of them told the kids, so some of those kids told the police rather, maybe they wouldn't want to talk to me because I didn't fit in.
Mhm.
So that got me on the police radar. I was a sensitive kid. I was emotional. I had it was my first brush with death. And so I had an emotional reaction. A
Right.
classmate being murdered.
Mhm.
She was in two of my classes as a freshman, one as a sophomore. I knew her name. She knew mine. That was really the extent of it. We really weren't even on a high buy basis. But
Yeah.
my being emotional, the police thought that was suspicious. Like it was some sort of sign that I was sorry for what I had done.
Wow.
And then
What?
I got, go ahead. Well, I just wanted to add that they got a psychological profile from the NYPD, which purported to have the psychological characteristics of the actual perpetrator. And I had the misfortune of matching that profile. So it was like a type of reinforcing factor.
Wow. I mean, that's interesting. The fact that you went from being a shy kid, basically, and just being a human being and reacting to human emotions, right? Having to
Yes.
just lost a friend or maybe a acquaintance from high
Yes.
school and just really just being a human being and reacting emotionally. And that was what actually, it sounds like what kind of drove everything home for the investigator to try to make sure that they pin you for that crime.
Yeah, absolutely. That's correct.
Wow. So once you so I can only imagine like how it might have felt for you, you know, being as young as you were, like still a young adult and still a kid, really. Just, you know, used to your regular school lives, and now you have this big issue, murder that you have that been really placed on your head, and you have to now try to live in that space. How was it like for your parents, especially? What were some of the emotions they were going through?
Sure, but let me just explain how I got arrested, and we'll come right back to that one.
Excellent. Yeah.
Okay, sure. So I came from a single parent household. My father was never involved in my life in any aspect, and that intersected with the good cop, bad cop technique, you know. So I began to look at the officer who was pretending to be my friend, you know, the good cop, and as a father figure.
Yeah.
Before I was a teenager, I wanted to be a cop. So that intersected with another aspect of the police technique. So they half the time they talk to me like I'm a suspect, and the other half the time they would pretend like they needed my help to solve the crime. So they would say things like, the kids won't talk freely around us, but they will around you. Let us know if you hear anything. Stop in from time to time. They ask me an opinion question and congratulate me. My opinion is correct. So that went on for about 6 weeks. And eventually they told me, we want you to take and pass a polygraph test. We got some new information that we want to share with you, but you have to pass this polygraph first. So the next day, rather than go to school, I instead went to the police station for this test. And instead of doing the test there, they drove me instead across county lines about 40 minutes away by car to do this polygraph. The polygraphist was a undercover Putnam County Sheriff's investigator, but he never identified himself as a cop. He never read me my rights. So they didn't have an attorney present. I wasn't given anything to eat the entire time I was there. They gave me a brochure which explained how the polygraph worked, but had a lot of big words in it that I didn't understand. But then I thought, well, I'm there to help the police, so what does it matter? Let's just get on with it.
Right.
So from there, they put me in a small room and gave me countless cups of coffee to get me nervous. And then he attached the polygraph machine to me. And then from there, he launched into his third-degree tactics. So he invaded my personal space. He raised his voice at me. He kept asking me the same questions over and over again. And it really got me frightened. And he kept that up for 6.5 to 7 hours. And eventually he told me, what do you mean you didn't do it? You just told me through the test that you did. We just want you to verbally confirm it. And that shot my fear to the roof. And then a cop came in the room who had been pretending to be my friend. And he said, look, the other officer's going to harm you. I've been holding them off. I can't do this any longer. You have to help yourself. Look, just tell them what they want to hear.
Wow.
Be arrested. So being young, naive, frightened, 16 years old, in fear of my life, not thinking the long term, just in concern my safety in the moment, I made up a story based on the information which he gave me in the course, the interrogation. By the time it was over, it was collapsed on the floor in a fetal position, crying uncontrollably. And obviously I was arrested. I was charged with murder and rape.
Man. So that's whole thing you just like everything you just expressed, like it just sounds like there was a lot of scare tactic that was being used.
Yes.
Right. Forcibly just to get you to confess to this crime that really, you knew within yourself that you didn't do it at all, but you just was afraid, and anybody would be in that
Yes.
type of environment. Yeah. Were you even allowed to have your family or maybe an adult to be there with you, or was there anything like that that was mentioned? They were just strictly just asking these questions without obviously attorney.
Yeah, no, they were just asking me these questions in, a really aggressive way. They didn't say
Mm-hmm.
anything to me about having, an adult present or an attorney present.
Wow. That's a really great information that you share, because sometimes, for anybody out there who's listening to this, hopefully that's a takeaway. So if you ever had something where you've been either dragged to a police station and you know for a fact that this is not something that you're part of, to really kind of really make sure you have somebody who's a voice and advocate for you to be able to guide you through that. Because I mean, it's just so baffled my mind to think that as young as you were expected to know so much, but you didn't know much of what they're trying to tell you, and it was all part of the plan in a way. Would you say so?
Absolutely, it was definitely part of their plan. Yeah, so for sure, you should always ask for an attorney, and don't say anything until the attorney comes. It's very, very important so that they don't coerce you. But the innocence of a suspect often
Mm-hmm.
works against them because they think, well, what do I need an attorney for? I'm innocent. I don't know anything. I'm going to talk to the police. Look, what could possibly happen? And actually, quite a bit. And another thought that goes through people's head that really don't have any experience dealing with the system is they
Mm-hmm.
think, well, if I ask for a lawyer, that's going to look suspicious. I'm going to look guilty. They
Yes.
think that, but actually asking for that lawyer is the best thing that you can do in that situation.
And by law, are they required to present a lawyer to you at that
Yes,
time?
if you ask for one, they
Okay.
are required to present you with one. Yes.
Wow. I mean, I've learned so much just within a short period of speaking with you. But I'm just so excited to hear more of what you have to say. If you're listening to this episode, I want you guys to make sure you stay tuned to the end of it, because we have so much more impactful information to share with you, and much more of the story. So, so once you got um, obviously this, like
Arrested.
you said, arrested, and then you went ahead and they basically convicted you for this murder of this girl. Um, so back to the original question, how was that? What was the emotional side of it as far as towards your parents? I'm not sure. You said your mother was in the picture mostly.
Yep.
I mean, you weren't probably there with her to see, but what did she tell you she was experiencing? Because I know that would have been a big heartbreak for her.
Yeah, so my mother definitely was heartbroken, and she couldn't believe it because she believed in the system. She thought that she always believed that I was going to be found not guilty because
Mm-hmm.
she knew that I was innocent. So she couldn't believe it. And throughout I was been charged as an adult, and I'd been found guilty, and I was sentenced as an adult. I was given a 15 to life sentence. I was sent to men's maximum security prison with fully formed adults. And she did tell me that the most difficult thing would be when the visit was over and it was time for her to
Mm-hmm.
go home, and she had to leave me behind in the prison. And she knew that prison was a very dangerous place.
Right. I mean, rightfully so. As young as you were, you're just a baby, and now you're being exposed to all of this, and you really don't know how to feel, what to do. And so she really, I can imagine just all the pain that she was going through, all the different emotions. So here you are now, you're in the prison, and they give you actually that's a huge sentence, max 15 to a year. Um, did you ever felt that there was always a possibility? I mean, knowing that you were wrongfully convicted from the start, right? Did you always knew that there will be a day where you'll be able to see, experience your freedom and be free?
Yeah, I would. The short answer is yes. I mean, I was given, as you pointed out correctly, I did get the 15 to life sentence, but I kind of put that out of my mind, and I just thought, well, I'm just doing a year or two until the next appeal that I was
Mm-hmm.
sure I was going to win because I was innocent and I believe in the system. And I wound up ultimately I lost 7 appeals,
Mm-hmm.
and I got turned down for parole. because I maintained my innocence rather than expressing remorse, taking responsibility. So they told me, do another 2 years and come back and see us. So, I mean, each time I lost an appeal and got turned down for parole, that was like I was being wrongfully convicted all over again, and several times in the course of that, I asked to try to get further DNA testing because, the DNA did not match me at the time I was convicted, and then the DNA data bank, then the DNA data bank was created, and I was trying to get further DNA testing, and then they blocked me from getting they blocked me from getting a further DNA testing as well. So all of those were difficult time periods for me.
Yeah. So once you were in prison, that's a lot of appeals, 7 appeals that were turned down. Did you, how was life like behind the bars for that long time? The 16 years you were there. How was life for you?
Yeah, so I mean, it was it was very difficult. I would describe it as a nonstop obstacle course with the guard, civilians, and other prisoners as obstacles to the main goal, which was to overturn the conviction and and regain my freedom. There was plenty of violence in the prison. There was 3 or 4 stabbings or cuttings every day, and there was gang activity, and then there was other violence that did not involve weapons. At times, there was a vigilante mentality where people convicted of sex offenses. So at times, I was beat up. One time, I lost my life in that. But also, it was not just a physical thing, but also, I had to keep fighting off feelings of hopelessness, helplessness, thoughts of giving up, suicidal ideation. And every time I lost an appeal, it was very difficult. But in terms of like how I survived everything, I would say a combination of things were true. Many things were true at the same time. Definitely belief in God was one thing. And then, as I mentioned, I thought I was just doing a year or two to the next proceeding. I used to go to the law library and learn the law, and that gave a sense of comfort and that I was being proactive in my defense. I would gather. I would gather stories of other people who are exonerated, and that would be motivation for me to continue going. I read 3 or 4, nonfiction books a week, so I kept my mind occupied, and you develop a little bit of a routine. And even I had this elaborate fantasy when I would, play basketball or play ping pong or play chess. I would pretend like I was playing professionally, and so was everyone else. But it wasn't really like kids fantasizing. This was more like a defense mechanism. My mind needed to try to leave the prison for a couple of hours. And I listen to sports talk radio, but it's not listening to sports talk radio. It's a lifeline to the outside. And even within
getting a piece of junk mail, getting a piece of junk mail in the prison took on some kind of a meaning.
Wow. I mean, that's a lot. It sounds like you really just put yourself in a whole different space just to be able to manage all the stress that you had to deal with, and reading books and things like that. Was there like a particular book that you read that really kind of kept you going most of the time that you just could resonate with a lot while in prison?
Yeah, Mankind's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl.
Wonderful book. That's awesome. And so with all of this going on, now, when did you find out, or when did you realize that this time for your this next appeal was actually going to be something positive? Take us through that part, like when you actually got to be exonerated.
Sure. So I was in Sing Sing prison, and the guards opened my cell early in the morning, and they told me I had a visit. And I went down and made sure. Well, you sure you got the right cell? Because sometimes they make mistake, and I'm not expecting anybody. And they confirmed that I had that it was me. So I ran the cell, and then I put on like a certain shirt, like everybody keep like a visit shirt. So, and I'm hurrying up to get to the visiting room there, and I'm thinking like, who the heck came to see me? And I went inside there and I asked the officer at the desk, well, who came to see you? Who came to see me? And he pointed out this woman. And then he said, well, don't you know who your visitor is? And so I didn't want them to cancel the visit. So I said, yeah, of course. And I went over there and I spoke to the lawyer, and I spoke to her, who was my lawyer. She told me she was my lawyer. And then she said that the items had been tested. And so I said, well, what do you mean they've been tested? They're not supposed to be tested for another month. And she said, no, they've been tested and the results match the actual perpetrator. You're going home tomorrow.
Wow, what a way, it's just like amazing to hear. I mean, how did that feel when you heard that?
I told her, no, I'm not. And we went back and forth 3 times, and then for the next 3.5 hours, I had this mental paralysis when we sat there, and she literally held my hand for the next 3.5 hours, and my mind was spinning, and one thought had nothing to do with the next, and I was sitting there articulating, and she just sitting there listening, and every now and then she'd break in and say, are you ready to talk about tomorrow yet? I'm like, no. That's not happening. I'm not entertaining that. It's not gonna be here tomorrow and many years to come. Okay, we both know that. So I was afraid to hope anymore. That's the point. I couldn't hope anymore. My heart could not take yet another disappointment. And kind of what brought it home and made it into reality was she said, look, the visit was almost over. There's a ton of work to do between now and tomorrow. I need to get your sizes so we can get a suit so you can be presentable in court. Ton of work to do prep-wise in terms of the media. So that's really what made it real. But of course, like that was only a
relief for like 1 or 2 minutes, because then a different fear entered my head, and which was, I thought, well, something's going to happen between today and tomorrow. They're going to change their mind and they're going to do what they always do, right? Which is fight against me and win. And I'm still going to be inside.
I mean,
so that was how I found out. That was the whole up.
What a big weight almost lifted off your shoulder, but you almost were still in doubt, yet still trying to really, because it's like you felt like the system has failed you so many times, multiple times, many times, that you felt there's no way I'm going to give her all this hope now, because what if, right? And I'm just glad and happy that you got that second, third, fourth, many chance to finally, have your freedom and have your day to be able to really relive your life again. And it's not easy, I'm sure, for you, but I'm glad that you're able to they were able to finally get you what you needed, which was your freedom. And so once you got through the process, and you now try to integrate into society, and I feel like sometimes when we talk about prison and just wrongfully accused, we sometimes don't talk about the aftermath of all of it, or the after effect of all of this, because there's a lot of trauma, I'm sure, that comes with it, like you said. So that integration piece, how was that for you coming now into you were probably in your young 20s?
I was 32.
30,
I was 17 when I went in, 32 when I came out. Yeah, I remember 16, did 16 years. Yeah. So it was really difficult. It was really difficult. So they release you without anything. New York does offer compensation, but you have to file a lawsuit and go through a process. And as it turned out, it took me 5 years before I got anything, but there was no assistance from the state between point A and point B. So as a result of that, being released with nothing, I mean, I was, technology was different. GPS, internet, cell phones, these things hadn't been created before. There's psychological after effects. It's common for people to have post-traumatic stress disorder, panic attacks, anxiety, feeling of processing things at a slower speed, feeling having been frozen in time. So I was released when I was 32, but I felt like I was 17 because that was the age that I last was when I was free. Stigma attached. So you were in prison for 16 years wrongfully, yes, but you were there for 16 years. So how much of that rubbed off on you? Is it safe to be alone someplace with you? So yes, it has had a spillover effect to some extent in terms of personal relationships. I was always passed over for gainful employment. So as a result of that, I lacked stability of housing, and I bounced around place to place. At one point, I was a couple of weeks away from homeless shelter, but then Mercy College, which gave me the scholarship to finish the bachelor. So when I was in prison, I got the GED, I got the associate's degree, and I completed a year of schooling towards the bachelor's at the time that the funding was cut. So Mercy College gave me a scholarship to finish the last 10 classes. And when I lost the temporary housing that I had, they allowed me to live on campus and they gave me a meal plan. So that was how I avoided shelter. But in terms of other aspects of difficulties of reintegrating, beyond technology, culture was different. And neighborhoods, there were some houses and buildings and other structures that were the same, but many were changed. So it was just enough in common to feel like alternative, like a parallel universe. So altogether, it felt like a fish out of water. So, you know, it was lonely place. It was hard to try to build new social circle. I mean, I'm 32 years old, but I still want to do things that a young person. I still want to throw a ball. Let's throw a ball around and, you know, let's go to bumper cars on some carnival someplace. You know, let's, and experiment and try things and everything. But, you know, people my age, you know, they're in a different walk of life. Maybe they're married, serious relationship. And, you know, they did those things when they were younger. So then you look for people that are younger, but then those people are not really mature enough and they don't really understand how to really think ahead and how something minor can get, you know, they're not thinking about what's the consequence of anything. And, you know, once you get past a certain age differential, it's almost not really peer-to-peer anymore either. You know, so the whole social aspect to it was kind of difficult. And I mean, and that's general. That's me, but that's general. But in terms of me in particular, I had some particular challenges. So I had never lived on my own. I didn't have a driver's license before. I had only gotten as far as a learner's permit. I never had to go shopping. I never had to write a check or balance a budget. So all those things made things more difficult. I mean, I missed births, deaths, weddings, high school prom, graduating high school. So all those things.
Yes, sounds like you have basically entered into a whole new universe and
exactly right.
and a whole new timeline. Everything was very unique and strange in a way.
Yes.
And did you feel like that once you were out in society, did you feel that people allow you to be a part of the community? Did you feel, or did you feel like were they accepting of you, or were they more of a did they treat you different because you have gone through this process?
Well, I feel like some people it was different because I went through the process. I mean, there were a few people that told me that their friends told them, just be careful around him. You know, you weren't there, is he really innocent? Look, he was, you know, prison affects people in different ways, might be dangerous. He could hurt you, he could hurt your son, you know, that kind of. So, I mean, it kind of went across the spectrum like that. But, you know, in many ways, it's been more like if I still feel like in certain ways like I'm still locked up. You know, I have freedom of movement. There's no physical bars, but I'm still more of a participant. More of an observer in the society, more so than a participant. And what's frustrating about that is that I'm the same thing as somebody else who never was arrested for anything. The only thing is I had the misfortune of being arrested and wrongfully convicted, but I'm just as innocent as them. My charges were dismissed on actual innocence grounds, and the actual criminal was caught, arrested, and convicted for the crime.
So what do you think it's some of those factors, right, that are contributing to the increase in wrongful conviction within the U.S. today?
Definitely prosecutorial misconduct In most of the wrongful conviction cases, prosecutorial misconduct runs through almost every one of those. In terms of reforms to address that, definitely the Commission on Prosecutor Conduct, so independent oversight board. Prosecutors should face civil liability. They don't now. They have what's called prosecutorial immunity, so you can't sue them. And I also think when they intentionally withhold evidence of innocence and that results in a wrongful conviction, I think they should be exposed to criminal charges as well. But they currently they don't. So there's that. There's bad lawyering, and that's a major cause of wrongful conviction. So I think having one statewide system, so there could be oversight, quality control, limitation on caseload. It's not unusual.
Public defender represent 100 people at the
Can you hear me? Hello? Okay, I think you're connecting.
Can you hear me?
Yes, your internet was it was going out, in and out. Yes, but I can hear you now. We can edit that out.
Yeah, sure. So coerced false confessions, cause wrongful conviction, 25% the DNA proven wrongful conviction. So videotaping interrogations from beginning to end, having a pre-trial hearing where the reliability of a confession would be good. Misidentification is cause wrongful conviction, 75% of the cases. So having more accurate procedures. And lying informants is another major cause of wrongful conviction, 15% of the DNA proven wrongful conviction. So all these deficiencies need to be fixed. And, I think that with the advancement of technology, it kind of in DNA, we kind of get lulled into a false sense of security. Like we think that something like that could never happen now, but actually, DNA is only around 5 to 12% of all serious felony cases. So it's not really able to be a factor in most cases. And those same systemic deficiencies that have led to wrongful convictions, 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago, in those cases, they remain largely unaddressed by legislation. So somebody could be wrongfully convicted just as easily now as before.
Wow. I mean, it sounds like all of those different, factors do play a lot of major role in people still being convicted, wrongfully convicted. And it's interesting that even now, today, we're in 2020, 2021, but it sounds like the likelihood of someone being wrongfully convicted is still high.
Yes, I would agree with that.
With all the statistic and information you share.
Yes.
And so, I mean, that shows me that there is a lot of work that we as society still need to be doing, and to really make sure that whatever, all the amount of people, I believe it was 2.3 million people that are in our prison system today, but a lot of those people are not wrongfully convicted. They don't belong behind those cells. They belong with their family. They belong at home. They belong with society. And so, so once you got out of jail, I know you have done your work, right? And I'm sure you're still doing the work today.
Yes.
To rehabilitate yourself. And so, and I also, we talked earlier, you shared with me how you are now contributing and helping. I would love for you to share with us how, what made you get into wanting to help and give back, and how are you helping a lot of other people who are also in the same category, like being wrongfully convicted now? How are you trying to reconnect all those innocent people with their family back home?
Sure. So after I got a bachelor's degree, I did get master's degree. My master's thesis is written on wrongful conviction causes and reform. So for my first 5 years of freedom, I was an individual advocate. So I did a lot of speaking engagements around the country, and I was a columnist for the Westchester Guardian for 5 years, and I did a lot of television, radio, print media interviews, basically trading privacy in exchange for awareness. And I was regularly meeting with elected officials. After about 5 years, I was able to receive some financial compensation, and I used some of that to take my advocacy to the next level. I started the Jeffery Foundation for Justice, whose purpose is to do the policy work preventing wrongful convictions I was doing as individual, but also have the exonerative component. So from 2011 till now, we've been able to get 10 people home who were wrongfully convicted. We passed 3 laws in New York: videotaping interrogations, identification reform, DNA database expansion. I am a advisory board member of the coalition group It Could Happen to You, which the foundation is part of. And we were able to pass 3 additional laws pertaining to oversight of prosecutors and exchanging information, the evidence between both sides early in the process. We have chapters in Pennsylvania and California. We were able to pass a law in Pennsylvania pertaining to automatic expungement. So there was a unusual situation where even though somebody was exonerated in court, they still had criminal record, which affected them when they will go for job interviews, look for apartment. So we're working in those 3 states in terms of policy. And in terms of the specific initiatives, so now we're trying to repass the oversight for the prosecutors. We want to get rid of exceptions to videotaping interrogations. So when they passed the law, it came out watered down. They made a bunch of exceptions, and we want to get rid of the exceptions. We do support, there's several bills pertaining to parole reform that would allow people to be fairly considered for discretionary release, and there would be one that would allow elderly people, once you hit age 55 and also have 15 years in prison, you would be guaranteed to have to be considered, just considered for early release. In Pennsylvania, that's one of 15 states that does not have compensation. So we're working on that and the oversight for the prosecutors. In California, again, the oversight for the prosecutors, and we think we can get rid of death penalty. So at some point doing the work with the foundation, it became not enough for me to sit in the front row, even if I was the lawyer's boss. So we worked on the case, we collaborated with colleagues. I couldn't sit at the defense table. I wanted to be able to sit at the table, and I wanted to be able to represent some of the clients. I wanted to be able to make some of the arguments. So I made a foray into law school. And as we sit here and speak, I'm a licensed attorney. And I wanted, so that in pursuit of the dream of exonerating others as an attorney. But in terms of, that's all background to get to your question. So your question is, why do all this kind of work? Right? Why not be on an island someplace, just sipping margaritas?
Enjoying your time,
enjoying my time, living a never-ending vacation. Right, and the answer is that, I believe my place in the world is to fight wrongful conviction and, broader justice reform. I do think that's my place in the world, is how I make sense of everything that happened, that happened to me. I can't forget about the men and women that I metaphorically left behind. And so I do this work. It's healing, it's cathartic, it's meaningful. I need to make my suffering count for something. And I do think it's making a difference. And, the concept of living a purpose-driven life and helping others and, life of service, and just trying to, have God be pleased with me, and, not to bury my talents and never be heard from again. I realize many people in my position have not had the same educational opportunities that I've had. I didn't get the same breaks at the same time that, like I did along my journey. And so I do feel a strong moral responsibility to do everything that I can.
And it sounds like you are really doing amazing, trying to manage all of that, and try to also, enjoy the remaining life that you have here on earth, and that we all have. And I feel, what a great way to give back, and the part that you said that really touched me was, you said you cannot forget your family in a way back, those people that you left behind. Once you're out, it's about reaching out and and doing everything you can. It sounds like that's what you're doing,
Yes,
to be able to reach out a hand and bring some more people with you along the journey.
absolutely, yes.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's
leave
always
a
a
legacy, legacy behind, and leave the
hmm
world in a little bit of a better place, than what I found it.
yeah. Um, and I think you already answered a lot of these questions. But the US as a whole, I feel it's looked at from the outside, speaking personally, as an immigrant, it's seen as a beacon of hope, a beacon, I mean, of promise, like, almost like a promised land. Like there's so many opportunities. Um, but yet it's also have this narrative or this characteristic about, you know, not having everyone be able to have a voice, you know, and I feel that's something that is lacking a lot. And so, what do you think, in your own opinion, the U.S. can do um, to prevent future
Mhm.
injustice when it comes to, you know, the wrongfully accused?
All the different reforms that I mentioned, we need to
Hmm.
pass all of those in, all the states, and we need that in the federal system as well. I think that the practice of denying people parole if they maintain their innocence, and
Hmm.
instead of expressing remorse and taking responsibility, I mean, that's trapped some innocent people. And I wound up serving an additional year, as it turned out, because of that. So
Right.
I think all those reforms need to be passed, but we also need to change the culture.
Hmm.
A lot of times I mean, district attorneys run their conviction record, so it becomes more about wins and losses rather than doing justice. Whereas the real job of the prosecutor is to do justice, and that way that means convicting somebody guilty through
Hmm.
lawfully gathered evidence that's presented in a fair trial,
Yes.
or dismissing a case against somebody who's innocent. What pre-trial, post-conviction, instead of well, my conviction rate's 99%, or district attorney, him or herself, wanting
Hmm.
to use a case to move up the ladder to a higher position, or another prosecutor below trying to get promotion, and which is going to lead to pay increase, and
Hmm.
he's on the way up. So I think that those things are important. And we see the rise now of the progressive prosecutor, people running on those planks. And when you get the right people in position, and this is why it's so important for everybody to vote, it makes such a tremendous difference who's actually in office. I mean, like in New York, for example, when Ken Thompson was elected DA in Brooklyn, 23 people were exonerated in
Hmm.
2.5 years, who would have never seen the light of day if the
Yes.
incumbent had, remained, who was there for 24 years, that wrongfully convicted most of those people, was still there. So
Hmm.
when you get the right people in office, I mean, I think you can go a long way towards criminal justice reform. I do think that it's really important to also not forget about the other criminal justice issues. I mean, things like mass incarceration. I mean, there were people incarcerated for nonviolent offenses, and there were people
Hmm.
that were there who had committed drug offenses, but they were sentenced to more time than people that had committed violence. So that was backwards to me. I saw elderly people in prison, people that were literally being pushed around in wheelchairs and hunched over and bedridden on canes, and
Hmm.
in on dialysis machine. And I read some of their parole decisions, and your release is incompatible with society's safety, and it would be laughable if it wasn't such a serious thing. And things like compassionate release,
Hmm.
where if a prisoner is determined to be uh, terminally ill, they can petition to die with dignity, with their family, while free. And I saw instances where by the time, sometimes a person died but before the decision even came down, or they waited so long they had like a day or two left. And things like solitary confinement, which is regarded as being like a type of torture. And removing college education for prisoners, which is such a strong crime fighting tool, you know, and having the need for prison reform. And since we have vocational trades in the prison, can we please have up-to-date curriculum so that people really can get equipped to do a trade so that they can get a good job once they're released. So we return people to society with some skills. They're going to be able to get gainful employment, which means their chances of making it are higher. Whereas if you return somebody, if we're not going to hire them, we're not going to train them, okay, the temptation to return back to crime, go back into the old ways and the old neighborhoods, the same people, is going to be higher. And so instead of people paying into the tax base, they're going to be paying to incarcerate them per year. So all these different issues that I saw while it was there, and the need for, you know, parole reform, all those things, we have to improve the system as a whole, all of these issues. And this is about rehabilitation. This is about having a more accurate and just system. People over sentenced, and sentencing disparities often based on race. And you know, it's maddening to me. It angers me when I think about all the police brutality, and when there's all these unjustifiable deadly police force. And all of a sudden now, in those cases, the prosecutors can't seem to get an indictment. All of a sudden now, they can't quite seem to get a conviction, but they're able to push the envelope and do illegal, unethical things, so much so that people don't get fair trials, so much so that people get over sentenced, so much so that innocent people are convicted, but there's suddenly this hapless prosecutor that can't do anything despite their best efforts, so that law enforcement, who's supposed to enforce the law, instead are getting away with crime. So all those things, you know, need to be turned around. But the beautiful thing about all of this, though, Faith, is that this is about accuracy and justice, and it's not anti-law enforcement per se. It is against cops that are breaking laws, prosecutors that are breaking laws, but it's not against them per se. If they do their job the right way, those are very essential. You know, those are very essential functions. And you know, don't tell me it's a few bad apples, because you know it's a lot. It's a lot more than that. The registry, National Registry Exoneration, which catalogs wrongful convictions across the country from 1989 forward. 2,755 exonerations, but those are the people that made it out. Those are not the people that are still in. So it's definitely a lot more than a few bad apples. But at the same time, you know, I pitched a tent wide, and I've been accepted in some unusual quarters. Let's say I've been able to speak in front of groups of prosecutors, and I've co-taught the ethics class at police academies for the last twice a year for the last 6 years, and I've served on police task force reform group and transition committee for one of the Westchester DA. So I think that we pitched the tent wide. We try to bring everybody in. I think that it's easier to get the reforms position that way.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I mean, there's officers, police officers who are professional and are there to be that beacon for the people to serve. But yeah, that's also the other side of that, you know. So definitely. Now, out of all of this all of the experiences that you had, and you know, what are some lessons you have learned from all of this experience? If you can say that in like maybe 2 words.
Can I have 3?
All right, you can get one more. Of course.
Okay. Make a difference.
I love that.
So set goals, have a plan, be flexible. Remember, the plan is not the goal. The plan is only the route to get there. So if you have to make adjustment, then you do. You work really hard. Okay, no excuses. No reason why things can't be done. There are reasons why something might be harder, but you know, work really hard and never give up. I would say, so many opportunities in the world, and you can really, in a large extent, I feel you can make yourself what you want to be.
That's right.
Appreciate the small things. I like being able to just be outside in the dark. I like to feel the sun on my face, a fresh air. I
Mm-hmm.
like freedom of movement. I love trying new things. I'm a big proponent of that. I mean, have new experiences, do new activities, try new food, go new places, travel if you can, and all these things. You learn and you expand. And to me, that's how you experience life, and just try to be the best that you can. Always look for self improvement and what can you learn and improve on. Can you do a little bit of be just a little bit better than you were, the day before?
That's wonderful. That's a great lesson to share with all of us. I took a lot away too. The fact that, living life to the fullest, really. That's what I took away. It's been such a honor and just just amazing having you on and sharing your story with us so thoroughly, and being so open. Really, really appreciate that. And now, you know, you went through all of this, but here you are working hard to bring so many more people home, to their families. And that just to me shows that the type of person that you are and you've become also. So you're doing some great work, right? How can our listeners be able to be a part of this and, help free more innocent people?
Sure. So the foundation has we have a crowdfunding page on the website called Patreon. So
Okay.
my dream is, what if there was 25,000 people that could afford $3 or $5 on a recurring monthly basis? That would give us
Hmm.
close to $1 million budget, and we would be able to increase the number of cases, our capacity, how many cases we can do at once. We hire attorneys, paralegals,
Hmm.
investigators, other essential personnel. Right now, we have 10 cases actively that we're working on, but we have another 7 that are approved that are just waiting. We don't have capacity to move those forward. We're working in 3 states in terms of policy,
Hmm.
and we would be able to go into other states if we had additional funding. So I think if people could help get the word out, social media,
Okay.
word of mouth, if they could sign up themselves,
Yes.
certainly attending, learning more about wrongful conviction, and
Hmm.
sharing that with friends and family, and contacting elected officials, and when bills are introduced, to make the system more accurate and express
Yes.
support for those things. Could have students can have I've seen college campuses where there are students that have student groups.
Hmm.
You could certainly volunteer for their nonprofit organizations. It could happen to you as a big coalition. Everybody can come in and help us to whatever
Yes.
extent that they can. So that's another way to get involved. I mean, think
Hmm.
about a career. Think
Yeah.
about being a lawyer who
Yes.
works on these cases, or you do some other kind of law, but you do one case, at least one case pro
Hmm.
bono on wrongful conviction case. You could be investigator, you could be a paralegal within nonprofit sphere that does these works on these kind of cases. There's other disciplines like fundraising and social media and
Hmm.
grant writing and secretarial and public relational. Those things. There's help on the reintegrative side, maybe be a psychologist or a social worker,
Hmm.
helping people to reintegrate. You could be prosecutor or cop, that you play things the right way. And I remember some years ago, Faith, that there was a study by New York Times that said that in 25% of exonerations that happened that year, there was some level of cooperation at some point by either the cops or the prosecutors. Or
Hmm.
you could be elected official, you could be a staff person, you could be a judge. Listen, be a juror. Okay, so don't get out of jury duty, please. Don't get out of it. Go there and
Right.
really, really hold prosecution to their burden of proof. And if they prove it, then you know how you vote. But if they
Yeah.
didn't prove it, you're supposed to find the defendant not
Hmm.
guilty, and get out and vote. It's so important to get the right people in office. So if somebody is running on justice reform plank, and then that's who you want to vote for, of either party. But when people are always blocking progress, we need to get them out. I mean, it's the rare politician that's going to do something because it's the right thing to do.
To do.
It's not only if they're going to get votes and get
Right.
reelected, then they'll do something. So we have to do that. We have to sign petitions as
Hmm.
well when those come around.
Excellent.
A lot of people that are exonerated,
Mm-hmm.
there was a lay person in there, a regular everyday person that they didn't
Mm-hmm.
know before, that somehow or another became aware of the case, look into a little bit, and they ultimately build that bridge between them and the ultimate substantive legal help that they needed. So maybe somebody listening might do that. If the corporation you work for does corporate philanthropy, then
Mm-hmm.
think about mentioning them. I mean, my ultimate dream is to have an office in each state and ultimately each country, because I see wrongful conviction as a worldwide problem. And
Absolutely.
the countries where we don't hear about wrongful conviction, the exonerations, is not because wrongful convictions aren't happening. What it is
Mm-hmm.
that nobody's working on it. That's the issue.
Absolutely.
Nobody's working on it. So this is a worldwide issue.
Absolutely. Yes. In every country, there is an issue. We just don't, there's no, sometimes the advocacy is not as big as an impact. Um, so yeah, so that's great, guys. You can also find more to support it and more of his efforts. You can find more of his information as far as on his website. Um, for those of you who shop on Amazon, that's a great way to give back to his organization. Through Amazon Smile. That's another way. We'll also have that in the show notes. So if you're already shopping on Amazon, you can shop for a cost and really be able to do make your own impact. Also, I've almost forgot. We have so you that's a big news here. So you have a documentary. So Jeffrey has a documentary on Amazon. So those of you who has Amazon Prime, if you don't, you should definitely get Amazon Prime. And so basically, you have access to a lot of documentaries, and his documentary is called Convicted. It is on Prime right now, and so make sure you guys go and list and rent it. You can rent it for $2, or you can watch it for free if you already have Prime. It's a really awesome documentary. Really, it really showcased the entire story. Today, you got a bit of a glimpse into his story, but there's a lot more to the story, and I want you guys to really be able to hear the full story and be able to gain and learn from what he went through as well and understand it much better. Yeah, and also another organization to, let's see here. I think that's the website you have there. Um, Amazon, and then Amazon Smile. So yeah, definitely guys, make sure you follow up on all of this. I think you guys, we can all do our part, even me included, to make a difference. And we're all about lifting voices. And Jeffrey has decided to lift his voice, but not only his voice, he's always trying to lift as many voices as he can. And we can also be that support to him and that bridge to allow him to lift many voices as I needed.
Sure, and I just want to lift my voice one more time here, just to shout some of the other organizations that I'm part of. I do want to reference and recognize Restorative Justice International, which I sit on the
Mm-hmm.
Global Advisory Council of that, which, the philosophy of restorative justice, rather than just a punitive approach, but, it seeks to restore people back to a position, that they were in the best that you can prior to traumatic event happening. That definitely applies to wrongful conviction, and as well as crime victims and even and offenders. I mean, if you see powerful meetings between people who've committed crimes and crime victims, not even necessarily their crime victim, but any crime victim, and they can understand how uh, with their action impact on somebody, that can really be really transformative as
Mm-hmm.
well. And I want to recognize also the National Justice Impacted Bar Association, which is a soon to launch bar association, which encourages formerly incarcerated people to go to law school and become lawyers, and to try to improve the justice system, making that more accurate. So, noteworthy causes and noteworthy organizations, and RAP, which I volunteer at sometimes, release aging people from prison, and, the groundbreaking work they
Mm-hmm.
do in leading the fight for parole reform, the elderly parole that we mentioned, and
Yes.
even, just regular parole reform. I mean, so many people, I saw so many model prisoners. Some of them were living in honor block that were different people than they were 10, 15, 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
And they would go to parole board, and they would be denied parole over and over and over again. The parole board reference, oh, nature of crime. But, that was known by the judge who sentenced you, and that's never actually going to change. And we're supposed to be assessing rehabilitation. I mean, otherwise it's so demoralizing as well, because what's the point of people to rehabilitate themselves if we're not going to give them a second chance? And
Yes.
you know, everybody deserves another chance. We're all better than the worst thing that we ever did. And I think that when we don't parole people that are deserving of that, then as a society, we lose out, because there's been a lot of formerly incarcerated people who've come home who make good contributions, some of them in the nonprofit sector. I mean, diverting
Yes.
at-risk youth from a life of crime and ultimately incarceration, and prisoner reentry programs. Still others teach. So there's many different contributions that have been made, and those people, if they had not been paroled, they wouldn't be making those contributions, and as a society, we would not be, getting the benefit of that work.
Most definitely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. You have been such a joy in bringing so much light to this topic. It's a very important topic of prison reform, and also trying to be a part of the voices of many. Well, thank you so much, Jeff. You are awesome, and we want to thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. All right, guys. Thank you for listening to this episode, and we look forward to seeing you guys soon. Keep on lifting voices, one unique story at a time.